do it this way. All right. All right. Okay, audio's good. All right. Thank you, fam. Okay, so to answer this question about whiteness, right? There has been three major discoveries in science that has put this whole thing of of white superiority to bed. And the first pillar, of this truth has to do with the Human Genome Project. So, if you don't know what the Human Genome Project is, I actually have a few slides here. It says, it launched in October of 1990 and completed in April of 2003. The Human Genome Project signature accomplishment, generating the first sequence of the human genome. So they mapped the entire human genome, right? And it was a way for them to figure out what specific genes did and what their traits were. So that was a huge, huge accomplishment, for this particular project. But that was one of the pillars that helped to knock down or one of the pillars to help to stand up the truth of what white supremacy is. So that's the first one, right? And let's see here. This is just a scientific article that goes along with it, right? So the complete sequence of a human genome, and then next on screen here it says the current human reference genome was released by the Genome Reference Consortium in it says 2013, and most recently patched in 2019, 400 years. All right, so that was the first one. Right. So first one, they were able to map the human genome, see what traits or what genes did what. And then the second major discovery has to do with the ancient DNA. Right. So, if you're familiar with like the archaeological site, archaeology, and they're able to dig up bones, dig up pottery, using these these certain artifacts that they're able to extract from the earth. Then they kind of piece together history. Well, one of the major discoveries, advances in science was the ability to be able to extract DNA. So at some point they were able to extract DNA from these old bones and old skeletons that they were digging up from the ground. And because they had the human genome mapped out and they know what genes did what, one of the genes that actually a few of the genes that they discovered that had to do with skin color or skin tone, they were able to figure out who, the traits of the people that they were exhuming or extracting from the earth. So that was the second pillar or the second truth that they discovered. I'm trying to figure out a good word for it, but major discovery to help put to bed this whole notion of white supremacy. So first one, they mapped the human genome. Second one was advances in ancient DNA. They're able to extract that DNA from the earth. And let's see here, just a couple of different studies, ancient DNA studies, new perspectives on old samples. It says, in spite of past controversies, the field of ancient DNA is now a reliable research area due to recent methodological improvements. So another thing to keep in mind with these, extraction methodologies is that they are constantly improving them. Even as we speak, they're constantly improving it, making them more efficient and making them more cost effective and making them quicker. So that was the other discovery, major accomplishment, in this field that helped to put to bed white supremacy. And then the third one is they completed the Neanderthal genome sequencing. So just like they did for modern day man, they did for the so-called Neanderthal. Now, if you're not familiar with the Neanderthal, according to science, they're not quite human. They're a subspecies. They live in caves. If you're Bible thumper, a lot of folks believe that they're the Horites, because Horites literally means cave dwellers, and Neanderthals are literally cave dwellers, right? So this third major revelation accomplishment was that they mapped the genome for Neanderthals. So now that they have the Neanderthal genome mapped and they have the human genome mapped, Now they're able to compare the two, and they're able to figure out what, if there's any relationship between the two. And let's see here, it says, this is just a follow up on the Neanderthal genome project. Excuse me, family. It says, May 6, 20, actually, hang on a second, let me expand my screen here. There we go. May 6, 2010, researchers have produced the first whole genome sequence of the 3 billion letters in the Neanderthal genome, and the initial analysis suggests that up to 2% of the DNA of the genome of present-day humans outside of Africa originated in Neanderthals or in Neanderthal ancestors. So basically, Europeans, and you have to kind of be careful with the wording here. So Europeans, when it comes to Neanderthals, have at least, or up to, they say up to, sometimes it's more, but up to 2% of Neanderthal DNA. So that was the other, one of the revelations that came out of these discoveries, those 3 discoveries, right? Able to extract DNA from these old bones, have these 2 genomes, have the Neanderthal genome and the human genome to compare, and all of a sudden, we're able to figure out what traits of the Neanderthal made it into the human population. And here's a scientific paper behind that, the complete genome sequence of Neanderthal from, you can see it there on your screen. All right. So, once these research papers started coming out, the scientific community at large started going crazy as far as, started seeing all these, research initiatives start spinning up, and people started asking questions. And this is where, this firestorm was going on, but, maybe, we're not plugged into this topic or this thread and we missed it. But these are the questions that they were asking. They were like, how a genetic mutation led to the white race. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's look up the word mutation just to make sure we're all on the same page. So mutation is an alteration in the genetic material of a cell of a living organism or a virus that is more or less permanent. So basically, fam, just skip ahead. A mutation is an alteration in the genetic material. It's a mutation in the gene, right? So, what we're going to see is that there was a mutation, a changing, right, in the human gene that caused certain traits to appear in humans, right? So it says how Europeans evolved white skin. This is I believe this is in science.org. Ancient DNA from skeletons shows dramatic natural selection or skin color and height in many Europeans. So as they're doing their research, family, they're starting to figure out, what? We know what traits are coming across over to the, from the Neanderthals to humans. And they figured out pretty early on, family, that white skin was one of them. Let's see if we can read this. Here it says, St. Louis, Missouri. It says, most of us think of Europe as the ancestral home of white people. But a new study shows that pale skin, as well as other traits such as tallness and the ability to digest milk as adults, arrived in most of the continent relatively recently. So basically, family, what they're saying is that this influx of people with white skin into Europe was a recent phenomenon, right? It wasn't something that was there for a long time ago. This was something that was recent. And it's funny when you hear, especially when you hear historians talk about European history, they completely whitewash it, right? They completely skip over the native Black population that was there before they were displaced by the white population. But now with DNA, now that they're able to examine old bones, they're able to look at those ancient skeletons and look at the DNA on those old ancient remains. They can figure out pretty quickly that those people are white or that they're Black. And what they're finding out is that the old ancient remains belong to a Black melanated population. But let's keep reading, fam. I'm just going to read a little bit more of this. It says, the work presented here last week at the 84th annual meeting of the American Association of Physical Anthropologists offers dramatic evidence of recent evolution in Europe and shows that most modern Europeans do not look much like those of 8,000 years ago. You got to say that again, fam. That most Europeans don't look much like those of 8,000 years ago. You know, you have to kind of take the years with a grain of salt, because another one of the things that I discovered in, you know, doing this research, fam, is that, you know, the dates will change based off of which publication you're reading. You know, I think early on they gave these large dates, but as time went on, they started to shrink this date as far as when this influx of Europeans came in. I mean, of white-skinned Europeans or people came into Europe. So, but let me just read the rest of this top blue part. It says, the origins of Europeans have come into sharp focus in the past year as researchers have sequenced the genomes of ancient populations rather than only a few individuals. So they're making a population-wide effort to sequence the DNA. And as they do that, they're finding out and discovering that, wait, what? Hang on. These people are black. All right, these people are black. So let's keep reading. So, you know, maybe you're also wondering, all right, so what does this have to do with today? You know, we got Russia, we got Ukraine, we got World War III about to pop off. Why in the world are we wasting time talking about black and white, right? Why are we talking about white skin, black skin, right? Well, it's twofold, right, fam? So in these studies, what you're going to find out is that the origin of the white skinned Europeans comes from, you know, what you see on the screen. If you look at the top of the screen here, you'll see a circle that says Yamnaya, right? That is the, you know, homeland or starting point of the Proto-Europeans. Now, you'll see the words Proto-Indo-Europeans off to the right of it, right? So this is the supposed homeland starting point for the Europeans, the Yamnaya. And that name should look a little weird to you, fam, Yamnaya, but believe it or not, that's 100% Hebrew. These Europeans come from a place from a people called the Yamnaya. And not only that, if you look on the map, you see the word Black Sea, right? So you got the Black Sea right in the center. Off to the right, you have the Caspian Sea. And in between, you have the Caucasus Mountains. Well, to the north, like on the top part of the Black Sea, is Ukraine. It's Ukraine, family. So the homeland of the Indo-Europeans is Ukraine. Why do you think that World War III is popping off in Ukraine? We might touch on that a little bit in this presentation, but just to show you that, you know, we may have forgotten who's who and where people came from, but the Most High has not, right? So there is a reason, family, why all this this unrest and the wars is starting in Ukraine, right? In the homeland. It is literally the homeland of the Europeans. They may not know it, but that's their homeland. Let's keep going. Now, this is just another map showing you Yamnaya, right? So if you look, you can find number 6 off to the top right. And it says Yamnaya people from Russian Ukraine steppes, right? Migrate into Germany and North Europe and bring genes for taller height. And then the other influx, so the influx comes from 2 places. One is from the Yamnaya, right, just above the Caucasus Mountains over in the Ukraine, the area of Ukraine. The other one, or the older one, is Turkey, which they call Anatolia. So hang on one second, fam. I'm just going to do a quick check of my chat here. Let's see. All right, just want to make sure I didn't lose audio. Okay, looks like we're still good. Okay, family. All right, so let's keep going, family. So like I said, there was 2 primary migrations into Europe. One was the Yamnaya, that's the more recent one. But the older one was from the area that we call Turkey today, which was called Anatolia back in the day. And that's number 3 on the map here. And it says, if you find number 3 off to the right, it says, first farmers from Near East moved into Southern and Central Europe and of course gives a year of 7,800 years ago, initially bring light-skinned SLC24A5 gene. So that's a gene that they identified associated with light skin. Now, what I will tell you is that there's a couple of genes associated with light skin. There's SLC24A5 and there's SLC45, I believe. Now, over time, they found a better gene that tracks and depicts light skin in Europeans. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it's called BNC2. So, and there's a reason why that particular gene is a little bit better than these other two genes that earlier scientists were using to track light skin individuals light skin traits in individuals. All right. So let's keep reading. And this is where, this talks about those two genes. It says 2 of the genes were associated with producing light skin. It says SLC24A5 and SLC45A2. So those are those 2 genes that I was telling you about, but there is a better gene that we're going to talk about. But again, if you look at the map at the bottom, you'll see Yamnaya and you'll see Anatolia. So those are the 2 migration paths into Europe. And this is just a scientific paper, kind of behind that's behind those maps that you saw. And let's see here. I'm just going to read a little bit of this where it says just above this, where you see the green highlighted mark. I'm going to read that full sentence where it says, "In this review, we summarize the recent archaeogenomic reconstruction of population admixture in Europe and demonstrate that skin lightening happened as late as 5,000 years ago through migration of lighter pigmented populations." Listen, fam, says from Anatolia, which is Turkey, and the Russian steppe, which is Ukraine, but not primarily via evolutionary pressure from vitamin D synthesis. So basically, the purpose of this study is to show that the light skin migration was in fact due to the migration of those 2 groups and not to pressure from vitamin D synthesis. All right. And so this is just another map to show that you have your 2 groups, one from Turkey, Anatolia, and the other from Ukraine or the steppe, called the Pontic steppe or the Russian steppe. Now, I did tell you before, family, that Yamnaya was a Hebrew word. So Yam, this is just in the Encyclopedia Britannica, just to show you what Yam means. And this is like the name that the Europeans were called back in the day. It says Yam. It says, also spelled Yam, ancient West Semitic deity who ruled the oceans, rivers, lakes, and underground springs. And it says it goes on to say he also played an important role in the Baal myths recorded on the tablets uncovered in Ugarit, which said that at the beginning of time, Yam was awarded, and kind of goes in. I'm gonna skip down to the bottom, fam, where it says, according, this is the highlighted part at the bottom where it says, according to some scholars, Yam was the same deity as Lotan, in Hebrew is Leviathan, who was represented as a hydra-like dragon or serpent. So Yam was, according to some scholars, is associated with Leviathan, a dragon or a serpent. So just an FYI. All right, fam. So here we go. So the question is like, all right, so when did this lightening, the skin lightening in Europe occur? Because according to science, like this isn't something that's, debatable. It's not in question. It's pretty well established in the scientific community. The only question is when, like, when did it happen? So if anyone's out there still arguing about, Europe being, white from the beginning, that's not supported by science today. Why? Because they mapped the human genome, they mapped the Neanderthal genome, and they were able to extract the genes from those ancient remains, and they proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that white skin was not there first, that it was the dark skin population that was replaced by the light skin populations. Like I said, when did that happen? So, depending on which publication you read, some will say 7,000 years ago. Just like kind of like this one. This one's interesting because specifically in England, there's this phenotype of dark skin, blue eyes, which, I think it's out of the scope of this presentation, but that is actually a specific Neanderthal trait. This dark skin, blue eyes is not the norm, but in England, that's one of the traits of a specific Neanderthal. So, but we will save that for another time. But the purpose of this, of me just showing you these articles, family, I want you just to see that, it's been well established. It's known that this white complexion was something that arose, right? It came at a later date. And it says how white skin evolved in Europeans. Pale complexions only spread in the region 8,000 years ago, study claims, right? And this one says 5,000 years, right? This was talking about, direct evidence of positive selection of skin. Basically, this article is talking about how white skin came to be prevalent in Europe. And this is saying they saw this selection that changed from black to white. They call it selection. They call it positive selection. But that positive selection happened in the last 5,000 years is what this one says. And they even have charts. And it's interesting because when you look at the chart, if you see there's a, especially like the one in the middle, if you can see it, it curves up. The closer you get to 3, like that's the closer you get to the present day, you can see that there was an extreme change in recent times, right? And then again, this is just another one that says 5,000 years. So like I said, it's pretty redundant, family. This one says detection of adaptation in the past 2,000 years. So just to show you, family, that, depending on which one you look at, they know that the change from black to white is relatively recent. It's a recent phenomenon. And this is, we're talking about Europe, right? So we're going to skip over this one. This one does have a pretty nice chart where it shows present day on the right. And what you're looking at is a graph of skin color. So present day, let's say, for instance, if you look at B, where it says northern or northwestern Europe, B, right? This is the skin, according to their scientific study. They're saying, according to their scientific study, skin tone today is white. And that's why you see it's this graph. It's white on the right-hand side. But as you move from right to left, and you're going back in time, you'll see that the average population, color of the population in Europe changed to black or to brown skin. And you can see that across the board, family. You can see Central Asia, East Asia, right? Only one that's a little weird is D. Americas is just straight black. So, it is what it is, fam. Now, I will tell you that as you're doing your research, you have to pay attention to the dates, because early on, there were scientists out there that rejected it. So around 2012, you had this article from New Scientist saying Europeans did not inherit pale skin from Neanderthals, right? But they could only say that for so long. Why? Well, because there were other research reports that were published after this that proved that was incorrect. And then after these other research reports came out, then it was pretty much settled. And actually, one of the guys that what I'm going to show you is that one of the guys that did a major discovery on this front, he actually won a Nobel Prize for it on skin color, right? On skin color. So here we go, NBC News, and it says, which parts of us are Neanderthal genes? Which parts of us are Neanderthal? Genes point to skin and hair. So one of the things you'll find, family, is that people will tell you that it's only 2%. When Europeans contracted Neanderthal DNA, it was only 2%. Well, that 2%, and they'll tell you that, and the 2% varies. That's correct to a certain degree. There's usually a base, how can I put it? There's a base pair or trait that's inherited. And then aside from that base, you can find random things aside from the base, but the base things that's normally transmitted or transferred from Neanderthals is skin and hair genes, right? Mutations that are associated with skin and hair those are the ones that are transferring over at a high frequency or high rate. The other things may change, but skin and hair are the things that's pretty consistently transferred over from Neanderthal to human. And this one, it says, this is an NBC News report, and it says a double barrel comparison of ancient Neanderthal DNA with hundreds of modern day genomes suggests that many of us have Neanderthal skin and hair traits. All right, mothers, our Emas, don't get mad at me now, because we're about to go someplace where you probably didn't expect us to go. But so like we were talking about before, Neanderthal skin traits came over, and it was the trait for light skin, right? But there was also the trait for hair that came over as well. Now let's keep reading, but we're not going to go too much into it on this one, but we'll dig into it a little bit. It says, but other parts of the Neanderthal genome appear to have been bred out of us along the way. The findings reported Wednesday by two separate teams of researchers in the journals Science and Nature follow up on the previous studies showing that Neanderthals interbred with humans outside of Africa, even though the Neanderthals went extinct about 30,000 years ago. All right. And then, of course, then it says prime territory, right? This is what I was telling you about, fam. It says skin and hair. Both studies pinpoint parts of the genome that affect skin and hair characteristics as prime territory for snippets of Neanderthal DNA. In other words, fam, those are the primary ones that get transferred over. All right. So this is just a map of where they believe that the interbreeding between modern humans and Neanderthals occurred. The part that you see in tan, which goes through Europe and through the Caucasus and into Asia, that is the territory where the Neanderthals lived, right? That is the territory where the Neanderthals lived. You can see where it says interbreeding with Neanderthals occurred, and their guess is somewhere in Babylon, of all places. And then off to the left, you'll see where it says Europeans, and it says BNC2. So that's the gene that I was telling you about, family, that they are now tracking or tracing, that they're saying that this particular gene, this Neanderthal gene, is what Europeans contracted. And this is the gene that's mostly responsible for the white or pale skin. And here's just another view of the territory of the Neanderthals. And you can see that it also includes what some would refer to as present-day Israel, right? Present-day Israel in the Middle East, if there's such a thing. All right, and so, just another screenshot from an article where they actually list out some of the things that were transferred over. And you'll see hair color was one, eating disorders and schizophrenia. Now, we'll touch on this as well, because one of the things that they identified early on that was transferred from the Neanderthal over was behavior and mood. Behavior and mood, right? In addition to skin tone and hair and all that other stuff. So, and I guess, history will tell us, how behavior and mood from the Neanderthal impacted, the Europeans, right? I think we can look at the history for that. But let me show you this this slide here, family. So this slide shows you all the locations where they found Neanderthals. Now this is pretty dated now. I don't think this is up to date, but wherever you see a color circle, that is where they were able to extract Neanderthal DNA. And so you'll see that you have a whole bunch of Neanderthal sites over in Europe, France, you got some in Spain, Germany, Italy. But then if you move over to the right, you'll see one that's kind of in the middle. It says Mesmeskaya. That is in the Caucasus Mountains. Now, let me play something for you real quick. This is from a professor, and he's going to describe, out of all these different Neanderthals, he's going to describe, how can I put it, which one Europeans are most closest to as far as their DNA. Like when they took the DNA of all those Neanderthals and then compared it to the DNA of modern day Europeans to see which one of these Neanderthals that the modern day Europeans are closest to, are related to. Let's see what he says. All right, stand by, family.
One of the most exciting things that we've learned about Neanderthals from their genetics is just how diverse they are. Neanderthals in Central Asia, for example, the very high quality Neanderthal genome that's come from Denisova Cave, are different from Neanderthals in Europe. Those differences are almost as great as differences between any living human populations today. So the Neanderthals had within them, more than 50,000 years ago, a substantial store of variation. And that store of variation, we don't yet know. One of the most exciting things that we've learned about Neanderthals from their genetics is just how diverse they are. Neanderthals in Central Asia, for example, the very high quality Neanderthal genome that's come from Denisova Cave, are different from Neanderthals in Europe. Those differences are almost as great as differences between any living human populations today. So the Neanderthals had within them, more than 50,000 years ago, a substantial store of variation.
All right, so what he's saying is that there's variation in the Neanderthals that they dug up, right? So basically, not all the Neanderthals look the same, right? Some Neanderthals were brown, some Neanderthals were white, but let's see which one he tells us that the Europeans are closest to.
And that store of variation, we don't yet know how it contributed to later human populations. It could be that we got most of our Neanderthal genetics from only one small part of the Neanderthal population. In fact, when we look at all the Neanderthals that we have DNA from, we find that we're most similar to a Neanderthal individual from Mesmyskaya, which is a site in the Caucasus Mountains in Russia.
All right, so what he's saying, families, is that Europeans are closest to, or the Neanderthal that's within their DNA is closest to, or closely matches the Neanderthal that's in the Caucasus Mountains. So this is just one of the things that pins Europeans to the Caucasus Mountains. There's more traits than just this one. I just want to point out that this is one of the traits that pins present-day Europeans to the Caucasus Mountains. So just to kind of take a quick pause here, I'm looking through the comments. So I see there's comments about Esau. So definitely, family. We're not going to cover that in this presentation, but there is definitely some. How can I put it? Yeah, Esau's in the house. So I put it to you this way: Esau is definitely in the house. And I saw someone also mention Japhet. So it's not covered in this presentation, but what I will tell you, family, is that the area of the Yamnaya was a melting pot of like 2 or 3 different people, 3 people at least, right? And we have that in the form of, we have a testimony from Josephus, we have a testimony from Caesar. I think there's another one out there as well, but we know who's over there. So according to Josephus says that the Greeks say that it's Gog and Magog in that area. So I saw someone put in there, well, did Japhet mix with the Horites? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And in particular, you have Gog and you have Magog in that area. At least that's according to Josephus. And then you also have Esau in the area as well, because one of the traits of the people of Yamnaya is, and you'll see this over and over again, they have red hair, blue eyes, pale skin. Red hair, blue eyes, pale skin, right? And those traits will actually tell us where those specific traits, we do have information as to where they came from. But I just wanted to answer that question. All right, so let's keep going, family. Let me see if I have any more slides on this half of the presentation. So I'm going to try to switch back over to the slide. All right, so hopefully you can see the slide, fam. Okay. All right. All right. So again, just to kind of recap what the professor said, he said that most Europeans are most related to Mesmeskaya, that is the Caucasus Mountains. The Caucasus Mountains. So this is just one of the things that ties Europeans back to the Caucasus Mountains. All right, so just to get a couple of terms out the way, there's a term called introgression. And so anytime you hear introgression in these scientific reports, introgression just simply means, it's the introduction of a gene, or it says introgression. This is from the Webster Dictionary, the entry or introduction of a gene from one gene complex into another. So basically, just think of DNA coming from one place to another, from one species to another. And same here. This is just another definition where it says the introgression of genes from one species into the gene pool of another species, occurring when matings between the two produce fertile hybrids. Okay. All right. So just so that family, all these discoveries did not go unnoticed. Like, the publications did pick this up. They did run with it. Whether or not we were paying attention, that's another story. But these discoveries did get picked up by major publications. Now, the major discovery in this front comes in 2017, in October 2017. This is actually an article from around that time, and it says Neanderthal DNA may have shaped our modern looks. And here's another one. Well, this is from 2016. It says Neanderthal-derived DNA has significant impact on modern human traits. Here's another one. It says interbreeding. This is from 2014. It says interbreeding with Neanderthals gave some of our ancestors distinct skin and hair. Let me say, interbreeding with Neanderthals gave some of our ancestors distinct skin and hair. I haven't talked about the hair part yet. Don't get mad. But also left behind a legacy of disease within our DNA, and mainly talking about the Europeans. Non-African people today carry Neanderthal DNA in their genetic makeup that is associated with changes in their skin and hair, but also with disease such as diabetes, Crohn's, and even conditions such as chronic depression and addictive behavior. So I want to stress, family, that some things that came over from the Neanderthal also impacted behavior. Now, this is according to scientific discovery, right? The scientific research papers, like this is in their papers. So we can't ignore that, right? All right. So this is what I was talking about, family, as far as like the Nobel Prize. So in 2017, this gentleman by the name of Svante Pabo, he's with the Max Planck Institute. He wins the Nobel Prize in physiology or science in 2022. This is based off of his work in 2017, and where he actually he uses this. Basically, I'm just kind of give you a high level overview. He basically uses a database of 200,000 people in UK. And actually today it's like over 400,000. But back when he used his, when he did his research, it was either like 100,000 or 200,000. I want to say 200,000, but 200,000 people. And he used that database to compare it to the Neanderthal database. And he was able to confirm that, which genes specifically came over from Neanderthals. And this is like what I say, this is like the nail in the coffin, beyond a shadow of a doubt. He's winning a Nobel Prize for this thing, fam. Right. So it's been thoroughly vetted. And this is the discovery that went it seems like it just went unnoticed, within our community and in other communities. It says, let's see here. For his discoveries concerning the genomes of extinct hominins in human evolution. And this is one of the scientific papers. This was his paper that came out in 2017, the contribution of Neanderthals to phenotypic variation in humans. So basically, the things of the Neanderthals that have impacted the way that humans look is what they're saying. Okay. So in here you can see, I'm sorry, it says he used a database of 112,000 individuals by the UK database. So I was off on that. All right, fam. So there you go. That was his study. Let me see if there's anything we can glean from here. It says, however, recent studies have also identified a number of introgress. Remember, whenever you see introgress, that was a term used to say that these were, basically DNAs that came from Neanderthals into humans. So introgress Neanderthal alleles that have increased in frequency in modern humans, and that might contribute to, okay. So it might be a little bit wordy there, family, but basically it's saying that, if you look at the last sentence, adaptive variants in genes related to immunology, skin and hair, that's skin and hair again, pigmentation and metabolism have been identified. So one of the things I do want to show you here, family, is like, especially when you go through his scientific research, you'll see he actually pulls out the genes that are impacted. So on the second line from the top, or the second, the second line, it says B and C, it's in the middle. And, off to the left, it says ease of tanning. So that might throw you off a little bit, but B and C is also has to do with skin color. And that you also see B and C on the line at the bottom where it says skin color. And let's keep going here. It says the timing of human adaptation from Neanderthal introgression. So we're just going to talk about BNC2 a little bit, just to show you why they say it's better. It says, let's see, as with many selection scans, the function of alleles underlying adaptation is obviously unknown. It says among the set of regions with shorter initial period. Okay, I know it's wordy, family, but just focus on the highlighted part. It says BNC2 is a better studied candidate of adaptive Neanderthal introgression. All right, that's where I was going. BNC2 is a better studied candidate of adaptive Neanderthal introgression, where the likely selected Neanderthal variant is associated with lighter skin pigmentation. All right, so basically they're saying that this BNC DNA that came over from the Neanderthal was associated with lighter skin. All right, and these are just some of the research papers that are behind that. BNC2 as new genes determine continuous skin color. And just to kind of explain why BNC2 is a little bit better than some of these other genes that they were using before. So BNC2 has to do with saturation, right? So if you ever taken a picture with your camera, whether you're taking a picture of somebody wearing a blue shirt, somebody wearing a green shirt, somebody wearing a red shirt, what BNC2 is saturation. So if you ever tried to edit a picture, when you edit a picture, sometimes it'll give you the ability to change the brightness of the picture. You can change the contrast of the picture. And sometimes you'll see something that says saturation, right? And the thing about saturation, it's like, it doesn't matter what color you are. If you change your saturation, it's going to change the way that picture looks. So that's why saturation was a better gene to map. And here's just if you look at the screen, you'll see this is like a skin. It's like a skin chart where saturation, 0.2, that's where the saturation, but that saturation setting is pale skin, right? But when the saturation goes up over to the right to 0.9, you have dark skin. So just to show you that saturation, it impacts multiple colors to get you to pale skin. And here's just another saturation chart where you can have the hue on the right, on the left, saturation at the bottom. And again, the more saturated the value, the darker the skin, less saturated value, the lighter the skin. So that's why BNC2 is just a better gene to track. All right. So just to kind of drive the point home, family. So Neanderthal genes help shape how many modern humans look. So this was like I said, the primary understanding. This is thoroughly vetted. It's been out there in the scientific community for a very long time. There aren't, a whole lot of people that's refuting this. So when you think about it, family, when you think about white supremacy, at the end of the day, family, white skin or pale skin, we know, comes from Neanderthals. So then the question is so where is, where's the place for white supremacy, right? And that's why I say that this, these particular, research papers, they put to bed the whole notion of white supremacy. And it's funny, and like I said, I don't cover it in this particular lesson here, but at first, it's funny because when the whole thing of Neanderthals came out, before they thought that we were related, somebody said Neanderthal supremacy. Well, you know what? There's a thing as Neanderthals. They're trying to make it the Neanderthal supremacy. So at first, when they discovered Neanderthals, they portrayed Neanderthals as dumb, slow, right? Clapping rocks together and stuff like that. And it's, truth be told, family, if according to their science, Neanderthals had been around a long, long time before humans had been on the scene. So they had a head start. So by the time humans got on the scene, they should have been driving cars and flying spaceships, but they were still in caves clapping rocks together. But at first, and this is why part of the reason they were portraying Neanderthals as dumb and slow. But I'm telling you, fam, the moment that it was discovered that Europeans had Neanderthal DNA, they put the Neanderthal through a modern makeover. They made him, all of a sudden, he was doing art. He was making necklaces and stuff, no, I'm not joking, family. It's like this, it was one of the most dramatic, modern makeovers of the Neanderthal. And so that's one of the things I wanted to cover in this video coming up on Black Germany. But let's keep going, fam. Like I said, I'm not going to keep it long. This is just more of the same, just talking about, Neanderthal DNA over and over again, just to belabor the point, that DNA impacted the way, modern man looks today, specifically the Europeans. Lipstick on a Yeti. I'll stop. Let's see. Homo sapiens appeared. Okay. So this, let's see. I'm gonna try to skip ahead a little bit. It says, and all right, on this one, it says, are you a hairy diabetic who smokes and suffers from stomach cramps? Your Neanderthal ancestry is to blame, right? So it keeps alluding to hair. We haven't really talked about hair yet. I think this is the section where we're going to hair. But, again, it says, remnants of Neanderthal DNA and genes of non-African humans are linked to a range of health problems, as they are also associated with smoking and thick hair. And same thing here, family. This one also talks about hair, I believe, says interbreeding with Neanderthals gave some of our ancestors distinctive skin and hair. Distinctive skin and hair. And just to kind of talk about hair again, it says the researchers found Neanderthal DNA in regions of the human genome associated with skin and hair, suggesting early humans leaving Africa benefited from interbreeding. So now they're benefiting, right? Perhaps giving them thicker, listen, fam, straighter hair. So Neanderthals giving straighter hair now, family. That helped them cope better with the colder Eurasian's climates. All right. So, one of the benefits that's kind of quietly, not really talked about is that straight hair, family, is a trait of Neanderthals. So, when you look at our, folks that are straightening their hair, what you're actually doing is that you're mimicking the hair of the Neanderthal, or the traits that was coming from Neanderthal. And let's see, here's this, and so I guess, truth be told, family, we're doing a lot of things that that come from the Neanderthal. We're actually mimicking a lot of the traits that come from the Neanderthal. So our forefathers were not impacted by the Neanderthals, but we go, unfortunately, what our people are doing is that we're going out and mimicking those traits that come from the Neanderthal. Think about it, fam. Light skin comes from the Neanderthal. And as you can see on the screen, it says, why are some Jamaicans bleaching their skin to get lighter? They are bleaching their skins to look, they may not know this, but they're bleaching their skins to look like the Neanderthal. Same thing with straight hair, though, family. When you straighten your hair, you're straightening your hair to look like the Neanderthal. Those are two of the traits of the Neanderthal that our people are unfortunately trying to mimic. All right, and this is just the impacts of bleaching your skin. So it's ironic because the young lady on the left, she doesn't have Neanderthal DNA, all right? But then she's bleaching her skin to look as though she has Neanderthal DNA. So let's kind of just put that into perspective. And let's see if we can skip ahead on this one. So yeah, in this study, family, this is actually the study from the Max Planck Institute. And so basically what they did was that they broke down all the different traits. And like on this chart on the right hand side, whenever you see a graph going to the right, those were traits that were more than likely inherited from the Neanderthal. But the ones to the left are the ones that were not inherited from the Neanderthal, or more than likely not inherited. So you can see if you look at the ones at the top, autoimmune disease was inherited from the Neanderthal. Same with skin color, inherited from the Neanderthal. And in some of these other slides, let's see here, you can see where it says, let's see, body structure, big boned people. Sometimes that's, inherited from the Neanderthal. But let me see here. Let me just fast forward here. Mental, like off to the bottom right where it says E, it says mental and behavioral disorders due to tobacco, depressive episode, temperament. I'm stressing that, fam. Temperament. Let's see what that says. That's more so on the left. Mental behavior disorders due to use of alcohol. That is on both sides. But anyway, there's certain mental disorders, you can say, or behaviors that were inherited from the Neanderthal. And to me, family, it explains why you had these impulses of people coming from the Pontic steppe, coming from where the Yamnaya people were, because if they're intermixing with the Neanderthal, and these behavioral traits. Now, this is just me talking. These behavioral traits are being transferred from the Neanderthal to that population. And if you look at the comments from Caesar, because Caesar was and Caesar's complaining about these people coming from the east, right, with red hair and blue eyes, light skin, and he's talking in his account, he's talking about how they're savage and they're strong and they're tall and they're that lines up with that particular people having Neanderthal DNA. Right, and that's the byproduct of them having the Neanderthal DNA. Strong, the phonetic appearance, right, and the behavioral aspect to go along with it. All right, so let me skip ahead from this. Let me see. I think this is when I had to cut this slide in half here. So Neanderthal genes not only deepen immune, they also add skin and hair. All right. Let's see here. Oh, I did want to show you here, family, that if you have like a 23andMe account, so 23andMe actually will give you a Neanderthal report, right? So this is, again, this is something that's, is making it into mainstream, but not a lot of folks are talking about it. And you can actually, get a Neanderthal report, and they will show you, how much Neanderthal you have in you. And this is just an example report. And it actually shows the Neanderthal Valley, straight hair. This is where another thing I was telling you about, family, says Some of your traits may be influenced by having Neanderthal variants. Straight hair. Straight hair. So ladies, I'm just letting you know that straight hair is a Neanderthal thing. So just letting you know, fam. All right. So that's it for, let me switch over to my other one here. And so, yeah, straight hair. So just to talk a little bit about Tony Yah said nappy and happy. That's right, my brother. Nappy and happy. So nappy and happy, that's the what you were blessed with. Straight hair family, that's Neanderthal. You're thawing when you get that straight hair. Like I said, don't be mad, fam. Don't be mad. I'm just reading, right? All right, so we want to talk about just another quick trait of the Neanderthal. So we talked about the skin, right? White skin, pale skin. We talked about straight hair. We talked about the behavioral aspects that were transferred over. Like I said, this was included in the report or the research from the guy that won a Nobel Prize from the text that you just read, like the text that we read about the disorders, the behavioral stuff. Like that was his report. Like that was the report of the guy that won the Nobel Prize for it. So just to show you that this isn't just some fly by night report. Like this is the report that he won the Nobel Prize for, right? So that's why we know what was transferred over from the Neanderthal. At least we know some of it. I'm not sure if they shared everything. But anyway, family, just to show you another trait that was transferred over from Neanderthals: blue eyes. So remember, over in the Yamnaya area, the description of the Yamnaya was red-haired, blue eyes, right? Red hair, blue eyes, light skin. Now, blue eyes is a specific Neanderthal trait. Now, people will tell you, well, not all people with blue eyes, get that trait from Neanderthal. Well, in this report, it kind of breaks it down. It says like 97% of people with blue eyes get it. They have a common ancestor, and then we have another report that shows you that the blue eyes is associated with the Neanderthals. So anyway, so this first one says, this is the first fact. It says, blue-eyed humans have a single common ancestor. Blue-eyed people have a single common ancestor. All right, and let me switch screens here. I can't really see it on my screen, fam. It says, common ancestors had highly specific switch embedded in DNA. It says variation in color of the eyes from brown to green can all be explained by the amount of melanin in the iris. But blue-eyed individuals only have a small degree of variation in the amount of melanin in their eyes. And it says, from this, we can conclude that all blue-eyed individuals are linked to the same ancestors, says Professor Eberg. They have, listen, fam, says they have all inherited the same switch at the exact same spot in their DNA. Nature is constantly shuffling the human genome, creating a genetic cocktail of human chromosomes and trying out different changes as it does so. Here's another one. The College of Physicians of Philadelphia, Behind Blue Eyes, a look at the genetic and cultural components that propel the spread of blue-eyed humans. So it says, how do we know all blue-eyed people are related? And I'm sure going to read all this, but it says Homo sapiens emerged around, and it gives some number. Don't necessarily agree with that, but it is what it is. It says in Africa, but the mutation that causes blue eyes did not appear until around 10,000 years ago. So one thing I do want to point out, family, is that what they say is that this blue eyes appeared recently. It's like a recent manifestation. And there's a reason why they say that. It says, in a study conducted by Professor Hans Eberg and a team from the University of Copenhagen, researchers examined mitochondrial DNA from 155 blue-eyed subjects from Denmark, 2 from Jordan, 5 from Turkey, 45 brown-eyed individuals. Looking at the locus, and it says, The result was the discovery of more than 95% of blue-eyed people share the single H1 haplotype. This is a group of genes within the organism. All right, let me skip ahead. It says, Eberg and his team write, a shared haplotype among blue-eyed individuals is almost perfect and suggests the blue-eyed color phenotype is caused by a founder mutation. This means that the vast majority of people, listen, it says, this means that the vast majority of people with blue eyes share a single inherited genetic mutation rather than each person with blue eyes possessing a unique mutation. All right, so I'm not going to read all that, family, but you can go back and read it on your own. But basically, all blue-eyed people get that mutation from a single person. But let's see where it comes from, family. And it says, the Neolithic Revolution occurred between, it gives the years, 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. And because people were better able to procure a steady source of food, the population increased significantly. The technologies were emerged during this time, says, allowed archaeologists and researchers to track cultural migrations from the northwestern part of the Black Sea region, where the first humans with blue eyes lived, into the rest of Europe. So the place where this mutation of blue eyes occurred was in Ukraine. Family, it was in Ukraine. Remember, there's a couple of things that are tying this to Ukraine. One is Europeans were tied to the Yamnaya people, and the Yamnaya their homeland was Ukraine. I told you earlier that was one of the things that tied the people to that area. The second thing that tied modern day Europeans to that area has to do with the part of the Neanderthal DNA that they possess. Remember that DNA from the Neanderthal, that out of all the Neanderthal sites that were taken, that the one that their DNA was the closest match to was the Neanderthal sample that was taken in the Caucasus Mountains near Ukraine. That was the second one. So you have those were the two things that tied modern day Europeans to that area. This is the third thing, the eyes. People with blue eyes, they know, originated in Ukraine. Again, you wonder why all this turmoil and World War III is getting ready to start off in Ukraine. It's because this is their homeland. Remember, when Israel was kicked out of their homeland, Jerusalem was sacked, right? And that was the catalyst for Israel being spread all over the place. You're seeing this Most High do the same thing here. So that's why I say it's like, we may have forgotten where people are from, but the Most High has not. So just to keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so let me skip ahead, family. And, this is just from Europedia. It says, as for the genes of light eyes, this is talking about blue eyes, there's relatively high likelihood that they were inherited from Neanderthals too. So basically, what they use is a statistical analysis, and they say based on statistics that basically they're saying statistics wise, the only way that Europeans could have gotten this blue eye mutation is from Neanderthals, is what they're saying. Or they're saying it's a high likelihood that they were inherited from Neanderthals. And just to show you, some of these old references that we had gone through before, we were talking about the Spanish Jews, right? It says the Spanish Jew is always dark complexion, but just to let you know that there's more there that we didn't really read, right? Because mainly we was just focused on the Spanish Jews being dark. But if you keep reading, it says, and his hair uniformly black, while it's the German Jew is often fair as any German and has light or red hair and blue eyes. Remember, blue eyes is a telltale sign of being inherited from the Neanderthals. Red hair is that telltale sign of the Yamnaya. And I think I have another map here. Let me see if I got this right map after this one. It's a little bit further down. But what you'll find, family, I have a couple of slides with maps, but is that the Yamnaya, that section where the Yamnaya lives, it changed names over time. Because at first it was Yamnaya, Then it was the Scythians, right? Then it was the Khazars. It was the territory of the Khazars, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking about. That previous reference talked about folks in Germany because they came from that area, right? They came from the Indo-European homeland, which had red hair, blue eyes, light skin, and of course, like we said, the blue eyes is a telltale sign of introgression or mixing with Neanderthals. All right, so and just so that you know, we were talking about BNC2 before. So the other gene in this equation is OCA2, OCA2, and that's the gene that's primarily has to do with blue eyes, right? So, and these were the two genes that came over from Neanderthals. And let me see here. Let's see, adaptive introgression. Yeah, this is talking about the blue eyes gene, notably. OCA, let's see, notably the highest frequency is in East Asians. So East Asians have 62% of that gene. Europeans have 20. Melanesians have 35. And let's see here. And a little bit ways down, probably like the seventh sentence down, it says, the introgress haplotype contains an average of 10 differences with Neanderthals. In contrast, African haplotypes contain an average of 74 differences. So basically, family, what they're saying in this study is that they're saying that the mutation that's found in humans is closely related to the mutation that's found in Neanderthals. And because it's so closely related, they're saying that because there's only 10.6 differences between the two, they're saying that indicates a relatively recent transfer from Neanderthals to the human and to the modern day humans over in that area. So in other words, blue eyes was a relatively new transfer from the Neanderthals. And they even have, pretty cool charts on here. And basically just to explain this chart that you're seeing. So zero, the point 0 is actually the Neanderthal DNA. So, and then the section that you see in gray is what they refer to as introgress. So basically, this is the DNA, the OCA2, the blue eye gene that they find in modern humans. And you'll see one is East Asians, Europeans, Melanesians. I forgot what that bottom one is. But the fact that you find that this introgress DNA is close to 0 is telling you that basically what they're saying is that introgress DNA is close to the Neanderthal. Because why? Because it's close to 0. So I know, super technical fan, but just throwing that out there for the folks that are into that stuff. All right, so let's skip ahead, fam. Let's skip ahead. See if we can kind of wrap this up. And so this is just more detail around the OCA2 gene, and why. For the most part, we say that it's associated with blue eyes. You occasionally see folks mention skin and hair associated with it, but primarily you'll see that it's primarily associated with blue eyes. All right, let's see, family. All right, so I think we drove home the fact that the Neanderthals, gave Europeans the pale skin, as well as some other traits, including blue eyes. I highlighted here on the map of Mesmskaya Cave. That's in the Caucasus Mountains. So that's the one that's associated with that Europeans are most closely tied to. And I think this is pretty much overkill, fam. So I'm going to skip over all this stuff just to show you some of the data that's behind the presentation. All right. Let's see what we got. All right, so here's the map that I was telling you about before, about the Yamnaya. So this is the territory of Yamnaya. You see those two bodies of water? The body of water to the left is the Black Sea. The body of water to the right is the White Sea. And in between it is the Caucasus Mountains. Off to the left is Ukraine. So you can see that the Yamnaya territory includes Ukraine. Here's the same territory under a different name, the Scythians, right? Different time, same people. One of the reasons why I can say it's the same people is when you look at the descriptions of the Scythians, and you look at the description of the Yamnaya, and you look at the description of the Khazars, they are all described the same: red hair, blue eyes, light skin. Red hair, blue eyes, light skin. All right, and yep, and here's the Khazar Empire. You can see the Khazar Empire is also encompasses Ukraine. All right. So I think you got that, fam. Let's see here. I think we're just about ready to wrap up. Let me see what else we have here. Oh, yeah, a couple of interesting nuggets here. But here's from the historian Tacitus. And Tacitus, as he's describing the Germans, he says, hence too the same physical peculiarities throughout so vast a population, says all have fierce blue eyes, red hair, huge frames, because that's another trait that was how can I say, inherited from the Neanderthals, was frame, right? How big and stout the person was. And then the same here. This was from the forward. I actually just highlighted this just to show you that there are some primary sources. I actually did pull these primary sources, but I couldn't find them in time to get this presentation or to include them on this presentation. But just to show you that there are primary sources that talk about, that describe the people of the Yamnaya area, where it says, and this is the Khazars. Remember, the Khazars are in the same area, different name. It says, but it says both Christian memories of Khazar kingdom and Jewish legends about the lost tribes must have had something to do with the belief. It says, but were the inhabitants of Khazaria really red hair? They were, according to Hispano Arab historian and geographer Ali ibn Musa ibn and Sadil. I know I messed up the name. It says, who wrote that their complexions are white, their eyes blue, their hair flowing straight, right? That's another Neanderthal trait, and predominantly reddish, their bodies large. That's another description that Caesar gives. He gives that exact same description. And their nature cold. Their general aspect is wild. Family, I got some references on that. It would seem evident, therefore, that from here derives the epithet, the Red Jews. And I haven't talked about that yet, but that is a thing, Red Jews. All right, and Josephus, and just to show you that Josephus talked about the Greeks and who they referred to these people as. It says Magog founded those that from here were Magagites, but who are by the Greeks called Scythians. So remember, we saw Scythians on the map. Let's see here. Just trying to see if it reads better. But yeah, but basically, Josephus is saying that these people were Gog and Magog. Magog founded those that from him were Magagites, but who were by the Greeks called Scythians. So the Greeks called them Scythians, but they were previously called Magog. So here's the question, family. So if you ever go back and look at the, do a search for Jesus, and go and take a look to see what the phenotype, what the picture of Jesus looks like that you get back. So just like whenever you get a chance, type in Jesus, pictures of Jesus, enter. It's interesting that the pictures that you'll get back, and a lot of those pictures, you'll see them with red hair, blue eyes. Red hair, blue eyes. Red hair, blue eyes. And there's a reason for that. So a question in the chat, family, is based off of what we read, so does Jesus have Neanderthal DNA? Look at it, fam. They're literally making pictures of Jesus with red hair, blue eyes, white skin. Red hair, blue eyes, light skin Jesus. And we just read a boatload of scientific research papers showing you that the light skin came from Neanderthals. The blue eyes came from Neanderthals. I hadn't really touched on the red hair yet, but I'll most High willing, we'll touch on that in the Black Germany video. Are they making Jesus out to be a Neanderthal, a Horite? So that's a question, fam. So why are they making Jesus out to be a Horite? This is something to think about, family. So with all that being said, family, now we come back to white supremacy. And this is why at this point in time, family, this whole notion of white supremacy is done. Why? Well, because the science that's come out in the last 5+ years has proven where white skin comes from, and it is from the Neanderthal. It's also proven where the straight hair comes from. It is from the Neanderthal. It's also proven where the blue eyes come from. It is from the Neanderthal. So with that understanding, family, there's really no room for white supremacy, given what we know today. Given what the Nobel, Professor Sabo Pablo, published in his Nobel Prize winning research. There's no room for white supremacy. It's done. But I do want to leave you with this, family, because maybe you're thinking like, so does anyone else know about this? I mean, like, did they know, did they know about the origin of this Neanderthal origin or interaction, a long time ago? Well, let me show you something, family. So this is the genealogy of the Royal House of Europe. All right, the genealogy of the Royal House of Europe. This is artwork. And basically in this artwork, it's going to list the kings and queens or whatnot of Europe. So we're going to click through it and we're going to kind of go back in time, right? So we're going to click, and first we're going to read a little bit about the custodian of this piece of work. And it says it was made for the infant Dom Fernando of Portugal. And I'm not going to mess up these names, de Goys or whatever. It says a diplomat. It says records that he ordered a drawing of the tree in the trunk of this line since the time of Noah to the king Manuel I, his father. Ordered it illuminated for himself by the principal master of this art in all of Europe, by name of Simon Burgess in Flanders. All right, so just wanted to show you that, this wasn't just some random painting, right? This was something that was requested. It was, requested by royalty, if I'm reading that right. You guys can check me on that. But here's the manuscript, family. So here's the genealogy. So I just want to show you that, if you click through this genealogy, it's interesting. I mean, this has kings and queens on branches. It's a genealogy tree, and we would expect that, right? So it's it's going to show different kings and who was ruling and whatnot. Now I did try to. I think some of them are in Latin, and it's kind of hard to translate in Google Translate. But I did try to translate some of these kings and queens. But yeah, I mean, you just click through and you see the royalty, and you see the children, and you see how they're related to the mother and father, right? This is just a close up of some of the leaves on here. But what I want to show you is the root. I want to show you, according to this person that's creating this genealogy. I believe it's I'm not too sure about the person that it's for, but I want to say that he's royalty, right? but it's an official record of genealogy. Let's see who is at the root, right? Who's the root of this tree of royalty in Europe? So remember, at the top, the beginning of this presentation, I showed you two migrations going into Europe, right? One from Turkey, and then one from where the area of the Yamnaya, right? The area of the Khazars, the area of the Scythians, right? And I also talked about how, you know, they inherited a lot, you know, the light skin, the pale skin, the blue eyes from the Neanderthal. And so in here, like I said, what we're doing is that we're going through their genealogy, this piece of work that was created back, let's see, what was the date on this? This was in, it says like in maybe the 1500s. We'll say in the 1500s. So when they created this, who was at the root? Who did they say was at the root of their genealogy? Let's keep going. And so let's get ready to look at the root, who they say is at the root of their genealogy. Can you see that on the screen, family? This is the root. You'll see two hairy individuals on the prologue page. Two hairy individuals on the prologue page with a red dragon in the middle. You know, you have a crest of the red dragon in the middle. This is the root. So remember, we said we proved scientifically that they got a lot of their traits, light skin, all that stuff from Neanderthals. And, you know, Neanderthals were, you know, hairy, shaggy, you know, they had the straight hair. But just to show you, at the root of their genealogy, you find what appears to be Neanderthals. And a red dragon in the middle. Now remember, the Yamnaya, Yam is a Hebrew word associated with Leviathan, associated with the dragon, associated with the serpent. All right, so I'm going to leave it there, fam. Leave it there for you, fam. Let's see. I think I did capture some of this. These two dashing, they call them woodwoses I'm sorry, let me back up. These two dashing woodwoses are from the genealogy of the Portuguese and Spanish kings. Are from the genealogy of the Portuguese and Spanish kings. And you can see that there at the bottom of your page. And I just wanted to reiterate some of the things, the traits that were passed down by the Neanderthals. It says, you know, are you hairy? You know, basically thick hair came from the Neanderthal. And so we read this before, right? Caucasians have the highest hair density among the ethnicities studied. Black people have the lowest. All right. All right, family. Well, that is it. Hallelujah. So praise be to the Most High, family. Thank you for hanging in there with me, family. I know it's a lot, but like I said, feel free to go back and kind of, you know, review any of those references. But the main takeaway here, family, is according to the research that has come out, this whole notion of white supremacy has been destroyed, not by us. It was destroyed by science. It was destroyed by, by the guy that won the Nobel Prize. You know, it was destroyed when they figured out, they mapped the human genome. It was destroyed when they mapped the Neanderthal genome, and then when they were able to extract the DNA from those ancient DNAs, and they were able to compare the human genome to the Neanderthal genome, and they could see where those traits or where those genes came from. So at the end of the day, family, this whole notion of white supremacy is dead, because based off of science, based off of what you've seen today, pale skin comes from the Neanderthal, and it's not up for debate. Is an established fact. The guy won a Nobel Prize for it, and nobody's refuting him for it. The only thing they're not saying is that, they're not declaring this to the four corners, right? Right. He kind of made the announcement and just kind of swept it underneath the rug, in my opinion. But anyway, fam, like I said, I'm not going to keep you. So thank you, fam, for dialing in. Thank you, peace and blessings, cuz. Love you, fam. Thank you for all your support, your continued support. And most high willing, we will get the Black Germany video out. It's coming, fam. It's coming. There's a lot of information behind that one as well. So, but all right, love you, fam. You guys stay blessed, and most high willing, we'll catch you up later.